petrichor, that earthy smell after rain, and they breathe in the oxygen of that scent through their skin. Snails can live up to 25 years. They are all hermaphrodites. I'm not thinking about snails when I meet her in a bar on Bishop Street, small and dark and full of poems. She asks me to tell her about myself. I tell her that I am small and dark and full of poems. We rush and stumble through our first season together at the frantic, languid speed of 45 meters per hour. She accepts that sometimes my chest is full of screaming nails, that sometimes my thoughts are a twisted sponge. I learned that her mind is the unreliable keeper of her troubled consciousness, and that her heart is the frantic synthesizer of her soul. We dine in groups, in crowded, exuberant parties of two. Afterwards, she strokes my chest even when it's full of screaming nails. She strokes my chest even when it's bound like a book I never expected anyone to read. We put our fingertips in one another's hair, on one another's spines. We breathe as though we shared a single lung. We never leave one another out in the harsh sunlight. That would be like giving away a secret someone confided in you, like taking back a gift you promised them they could keep. Each of us has heard too many horror stories, too many sad poems. Each of us has been looked at one too many times as though they were something someone found on the sole of their shoe. Our silhouettes are holding hands in the petrichor on the night we hear a cracking beneath our feet. We crouch down in the dark and see dozens of snails. Snails that have come out onto the sidewalk to breathe after the rain. Snails that meet their untimely demise as their shells are crushed beneath the sole of someone's shoe. You only notice that they're there after you've already stepped on one. What is the word for the sound of your own destruction announcing your presence? What does it mean for your existence to be noticed only during your annihilation, for the two to be so tightly intertwined? How many times have we announced our presence and immediately had it challenged in schools, targeted in public bathrooms, destroyed at family dinners? We gather every last snail and hide them in the grass before we uncoil ourselves from the sidewalk. Later, we crawl into bed and press ourselves tightly against one another, as though to breathe through one another's skin, as though maybe by being so tightly intertwined, we can drown out the sound of safe spaces being split asunder beneath our feet. We hope to live at least as long as a snail does. Too often, a snail only says, "I am here," as it dies. In announcing its very existence, it sounds its own death toll. The two are one and the same. How many of us are snails on the sidewalk in the dark? So that opens it up. I want to thank everyone for their time and their attention. I've noticed that I depend a lot on animals as metaphors in my poems. This piece is not ready, but I am working on a piece about a rabbit, which seems appropriate because in the past I've also written pieces about squirrels. And people think that rabbits and squirrels are related, that they're both rodents. They are not. A rabbit is actually something called a lagomorph. If that's the only thing you take away from this evening, I would be fine with that. I'm going to do another one for all of you. This one is called Store. You are at a grocery store because you have decided that you are going to wake up every morning. And so every morning you will take your medication. And so every morning you will need to eat. You have convinced yourself that your body will not collapse under the weight of everything that has happened to you, not if you take proper care of it, not if you stop carving it away piece by piece. You have a sneaking suspicion that your life is a quirky mistake that somebody made on purpose. You take this hypothesis with a grain of salt. Under the harsh glare of the white lights, you are walking on eggshells inside yourself while the rising prices ask, why buy food if you're just going to eat it and then have to buy more? Why squander the fruits of your starving artist's labor on undeserving vegetables? Why fight the craving for a black hole deep enough to crush and grind you down to barely there? Your parents and their parents before them have passed down all the ingredients you need to be someone who has a panic attack in front of the frozen yogurt. You have inherited all the elements required to become a melted puddle on a hospital room floor. You only ever buy the same brands of ketchup and peanut butter that you ate growing up because the sugar-coated memories that they trigger are familiar. You remind yourself that many of our relationships are just copies of the ones we had when we were younger. And you know that the seeds of your own genealogy will have mushroomed beyond your control the next time you start sobbing for no reason alone on public transit, the next time you feel the need to scald your own skin. The last time you were here, you cried over spilt milk in the dairy aisle because maybe the half-life of heartbreak is just one whole cliched lifetime. You're scanning the shelves for a tea that will put you to sleep when you vaguely remember what it's like to drift off without torment, to wake up without nightmares. The man on the phone next to you has got white toast, acne products, and fabric softener in his cart all on sale. And when you hear him say, "Don't worry, I'll come and get you," you remember how those words cooled the panic of every flat tire and every last night bus that never came. The granola bars and animal crackers on the shelves evoke the sheer magnitude of friendships that can last all the way from, "Do you need to copy my math homework?" to "What time is the funeral?" At the end of the frozen foods aisle, not far from the dinosaur chicken nuggets, you see a small child turning in panicked circles, their terror boiling over, streaming down their face. They hold your hand all the way to the front of the store. Their name is a whisper in your ear and then an echo over the PA system. And the two of you sit in a manager's office waiting to reap what the announcement has sown. The kid's collar is wrinkled. Their Velcro sneakers are low-hanging fruit over the floor. Their response to "How old are you?" is only a little more than a handful of raised fingers. One of them wilts towards the floor and reminds you of the spinach you put back on the shelf in the discount section. You stack all your cans of beans and chickpeas and lentils into towers on the floor, and when the child's parent appears in the doorway, the two of you are bowling apples and oranges and talking about ice cream sandwiches. You come home to your empty fridge and put all the groceries away. You crumble a cookie in your fist just because you can, and then put the pieces under your tongue. You can't remember the last time you were happy for no reason, only all of the moments you were sad without explanation. You remember how good it can feel to find your way back to yourself after you have been lost. You remember that your being here is a decision that you are going to make repeatedly on purpose. It is not quite so hard to swallow. Thanks, everyone. I give a lot of poetry workshops in elementary schools and high schools. The high schools they're all interesting, but the high school students are interesting because they've started to sort of grow into that age where you keep everything very close to their chest. And some of them are very resistant to write poetry. They're like, "This is dumb. I don't want to do this. Why do I have to do this?" And then over the course of a few weeks, most of them will start to open up and write just these beautiful, beautiful pieces about things that are really important to them, which is great to see. And the elementary school kids, you can't ever get them to be quiet. They just always want to talk. They have all these ideas. They want to write 15 poems. They're so excited, which is also great to see in its own way. There was one of the themes that I had explored one year with the students was, where do you feel that you belong? And some of the answers were just wonderful. Like, I belong wherever my family is, or I belong in the woods behind my house where I can be alone. I belong on the swing my father built for me and my sisters when we were little kids. So some of these, the responses alone are really poetic. And I think it sort of speaks to how poetry is something that we can all find, all of us, in our daily lives. And expressing it is something that can come to anybody if you put a bit of time and thought and energy into it. This poem is called "The Good Kid." The good kid is potty trained by age 2, can read Mother Goose by age 4. The good kid knows how to keep quiet, how to hold it until they get home, how to put away the Wonder Bread and the Mae Wests and the Spam. The good kid is the kid whose parents never needed to go to parent-teacher night, but who always went anyway. The kid who aced the test that everybody else failed and still mourned that bonus question. The good kid has seen the rags her father was swaddled in after he was born into poverty half a world away. The good kid knows that you have to choose what to take with you and what to leave behind, has seen the china cups and faded photographs and gold jewelry. The good kid is a status symbol in the battered individual's ascent from second-rate immigrant to first-class citizen, an accomplishment that parents and grandparents will flaunt to impress the people they left behind 50 years ago in another world. When the good kid was born, his father was grateful that from that moment forward, he would always have a purpose. When the good kid was born, his mother was relieved that from that day on, she would never be alone. The good kid knows that he should comfort his mother when his parents fight. The good kid tumbles on linoleum or tile or gravel and says it doesn't hurt. The good kid always exceeds expectations. The good kid never cries. The good kid knows that her family has done so much. Her family has given everything. Her family has crossed continental Europe and the Atlantic Ocean on planes and trains and steamships to give her all the things she never asked for, that she was never entitled to. The least she can do is her best by being the best on every report card, every scoreboard, every honor roll. The good kid is a machine that runs on well done. That's amazing. Congratulations. To sputter and falter during the spelling bee or the science fair is an unthinkable malfunction, a mistake of untold proportions. The good kid knows what happens to things that no longer operate as they should, that do not fulfill their purpose, that become useless and obsolete. When presented with 2 pairs of eyeglasses, 3 flavors of ice cream, 4 Friday night movie options, the good kid asks himself which choice is the cheapest, which selection is the smartest, the most mature, the most impressive. The good kid weighs the variables and probabilities. The good kid calculates. The question, what do you want, does not compute. The good kid's family ask him what he will be when he grows up, and he gives them doctor, lawyer, engineer. He anticipates and he delivers. The good kid has dual citizenship and speaks the standard language, but has never heard the regional dialect of the generations that came before. The dialect is shameful and unwanted and subpar. As they grow older, the good kid makes those same associations with homesickness, with body hair, with queerness, with red marks on an assignment. The good kid knows not to ask questions, to show that there is no need to ask questions, to prove that she completely understands everything that is left unsaid. The good kid doesn't need to be told twice. The good kid wants to be alone. The good kid wants everyone to go away. The good kid wants to know that everything is going to be all right. The good kid wants to throw a tantrum and cry. The good kid stumbles and recovers. The good kid says, it doesn't hurt. It doesn't hurt. It doesn't hurt. Thanks, everyone. Do we have time for one more? I'm going to go with yes. I can't see or hear anybody. Nobody has taken my face off the screen, so I take that as a good sign. Okay, okay, I'll do one more. The spoken word community that I sort of came of age in is a very small, bilingual, close-knit queer community in the city of Montreal. And I think that often, and I can only speak for myself, as a queer person, and in the specific context of the spoken word scene, it's very easy and very tempting to only write really sad, angsty, sad things, just very sad poems. Because at poetry slams where the poetry is scored, those tend to score very high because people feel a lot of empathy with the sadness or the anger or the fear that we all express to one another. And joy is not always expressed or shared or related to in the same way. And so I'm going to finish with one of the few happy poems that I've written, and it's called Enough Time. When I practice my backhand against a school's brick wall and lose my 3 tennis balls to the nearby construction site, she tells me that maybe tomorrow morning, a construction worker will find 3 whole tennis balls that they can bring home to their dog. There is a golden retriever joy in the way we hold one another, even after all this time. I ride my bicycle down Clark Avenue one Tuesday morning in spitting sunshine rain in the smell of hot, wet garbage, and I think about the time we made scones exclusively out of substitute ingredients, and they liquefied and then crusted onto the bottom of the baking sheet, and we had to throw everything out. There is never enough time. One of us makes an announcement whenever we see a dog. Good boy at 2 o'clock, pug across the street, multiple Samoyeds in the dog park. We build a house in our mind's eye with an animal in it, a companion neither of us has ever had. We add a garden and a bird feeder and a barbecue. I build this knowing that I may one day have to mourn it. I build this knowing there is the possibility of having to let it go. That is what makes it so precious. We buy a bubble blowing stick from a vendor near Beaver Lake up on the mountain one afternoon, and every 5-year-old in a 100-meter radius becomes our #1 fan. I make my own bubble solution at home so that I can keep that feeling safe in my kitchen cupboard and pull it out whenever I need it. There is never enough time. On New Year's Eve, we drink sparkling cider and build the rabbit a cardboard fort. A month later, while the cat is being operated, we buy the last container of Greek yogurt in an abandoned Maxi grocery store and then drop it in the parking lot. There is never enough time. I wake up in her bed. She has her own bathroom cabinet at my place. I make her little origami animals that she glues to her desk. She buys me a t-shirt that says, skateboarding is a crime, not an Olympic sport. I grab her hands and guide her along when she steps onto my longboard for the first time, and our joy is anything but unsteady or precarious. Our laughter is a soap bubble that goes on and on and on, that does not shrink and does not pop. We have all the time in the world. There is never enough time. Thanks very much, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here.
Hey, thank you. Linda's gonna talk in just a second. Yep.
Thank you, Anne. Feedback.
I heard that from way over here.
Thank you very much. So now we're gonna have, who wants to go next? Okay, Dane is gonna come up. So we're gonna just change the view. Yes, please. Yeah. Do you want to stand in front of it, or is it how it's comfortable?
Yeah, being told. So
you're unmuted. You're unmuted there. Make sure. Yep.
Yep. Hi everyone, how you doing? Hope everyone's doing good. My name is Dane Swan. I started out in spoken word through dub poetry, hip hop, and then well, first hip hop, then dub poetry. I think that's the order. And then I got into the slam poetry scene in Ottawa in the early 2000s. I've competed at the Canadian Festival of Spoken Word in Vancouver, the very first one. It was the second national slam. And I've also competed in the US Midwest, and I've toured. After doing all that, I got a few books published. Two of them have been shortlisted for prizes. Amingus Lullaby was shortlisted for the Trillium, and my latest book, what's it called? Love and Other Failed Religions. I remember the failed religion part. Love and Other Failed Religions this year was nominated for the Relit, the Relit Prize for Poetry. I'm probably better known for an anthology I edited. I edited an anthology that came out in 2020 called Changing the Face of Canadian Literature. And that's basically the biggest thing that I've ever worked on. It was awesome. So the poetry that I wanted to read, I like when things are influenced by other things. Sounds weird, I know. And a lot of the poetry that I lined up was poetry, like I was messing with the idea since my first book. I've been messing with the idea of the Black church, the Black sermon as a genre of poetry. So I have some poems that mess around with that idea more directly. But I also, while I was on the bus getting here, I was thinking of a poem that I wrote that was part of a play that myself and my collaborative partner, Elizabeth Gallo, worked on. And I want to read it to you. This is a character, it's not me, so if he says any horrible things, no horrible things. But whenever I read my poetry, I have to make sure there's no curse words. So significantly limits what poems I can read.
I think you can curse in here.
Yeah, but it's like I'm so used to reading at bars and spaces like that. That's where I started, and then when you go to compete in a poetry slam, the finals are in a church. You're like, I don't know if I can go. My late mother was a pastor, so like kind of heavy to be cursing in a church for me. Anyway. So this, the character's name is Adiemo. We call him Adam in the play, long story. Anyway, I'm just gonna read the poem. I've always had this theory Teachers make nature boring to Black kids so that white people can have nature to themselves. Here I am, books in hand, in the middle of a park, the closest place the city has to nature. I sit down on blades of grass and listen to silence. Not the silence of insulated walls and traffic, the silence when birds and insects sing secret lullabies. Feeling drowsy, I awake from restless daymares. I breathe in. Tears fall from my face. I've always had this feeling. Most adults are nothing more than children who've learned to run faster than their personal boogie monster. Some of us gain the courage to face him. Others forget that he exists. But most of us never stopped running. We spend every waking moment hiding, days wasted on selfish attempts at escape. Then one day we take a glance at a mirror and realize we've become everything that we fear. I've always had this theory. It's okay to live with fear, but it's not okay to become the monster in the mirror. The only weapon against the monster is love. So first, we must learn to love ourselves. This is my first book. Came out in 2011. It was edited by the super talented Alana Wolf. If you ever have a chance to work with her, do it. And yeah, this was the last poem that ended up in the book, and it's titled Blackface, and you'll see why. Petty frauds, masquerading misery. Watch them tap dance dressed as hobos, full smiles and shimmies, seek your pity, your money. They are not the real McCoy. Witness the genuine dance. Watch how the soul propels a pulse that moves the congregation like an ancient tsunami of legend. You will fall down, may never stand back up, because this is our bedrock. Our severed sophistication flows through the earth like the energy of a juju man. You are now observing trance-inducing moments. The seizures are nothing to fear. See us levitate while standing on solid ground, all struck like the first time humanity heard Mahalia wail. Follow us on the dirt path to a shack at the crossroads. Take a glimpse inside. Experience our truth. A culture constructed by stolen people who remember this dance, despite the whips and chains, this music despite the lynchings, this art despite the prisons, slave ships, ghettos, miseducation. The system designed to squash us, we thrive through. Do not mistake us for weak like the pillars that bound sentence. Some things are destined to crumble. We have mastered the art of impossible. Some swore we were devils who should have fallen ages ago. You'll be disappointed if you thought we jock and chive on cue. This dance is not for your entertainment. This is a celebration, a hallelujah, a thank you to our ancestors, a kiss to a mother who has blessed our toil-filled journey. You're more than welcome to join us on the street. Woo. So our last poet had some pretty dense stuff going on there, and I thought, you know what, I'll read one of my dense poems real quick. Okay. I'm just trying to decide which one. Why is this book not added? This is the one. So this book, Love and Other Failed Religions, is inspired by the life of Lenny Bruce, who was a comedian in the 50s and 60s. Because my poetry adventure started through spoken word, when I started, I researched a lot of comics from that period, because a lot of them, they weren't really doing stand-up. Some were doing like slapstick, but others were doing what I think is more spoken word. It was more monologues and stuff like that. And he grabbed my attention. So when I had the chance to write a book about him, I wrote a book about him. So yeah, pretty heavy stuff. So this is, the epigraph comes from him. If Jesus had been killed 20 years ago, Catholic school children would be wearing little electric chairs around their necks instead of crosses. So that is the space that we're in right now. If you're uncomfortable at any time, please do what you gotta do. If all war is in the name of God, then there is no God. If God exists, I shall murder God, wear this electric chair in holy sacrament. I will become God and murder myself, only to be reborn on the third day. Witness the spectacle of my failure in existing as believers commit genocide after genocide in my name, erasing tales of generations. If Jesus died in these times, he'd be ignored. The media would call him the devil. He'd be prosecuted for a noble crime. There would be no cross, no electric chair, no noose around the neck of kilted schoolgirls, no enlightenment, just flashing lights, blinking subliminal messages. Read the secret language within the commercials. Find the place where laughter goes when the punchline is forgotten. Does it echo in your mind? These breaths are merely notes from a discarded symphony. My body becomes a drum roll. Lights dim. I think I smell burnt toast. The choir sings in controlled dissonance. I'll see you in 3 days. For thine is the kingdom, the power and the glory, for and ever. Let us pray. I never claimed to be John the Baptist, never said I could wash away the trouble of sins, disagreed about being called good in a world with only 2 possible answers to that question. I merely claimed to be honest, swore to be as loyal a friend as my pathetic failures would allow, and tried to be open to the idea of love's existence. I never said I was a prophet. You were the one who claimed to know the future, could ease pain with a blessed touch. When you were weak, my frail bones carried you. But there is no irony that in my time of need, you refuse to do the same forever. This depression, a catalyst for my starvation, I've already lost what I had to lose. A cold ore is the only way I can traverse this wasteland that remains. You are a heavy cross to bear, weaker than the scriptures. I should have walked away, watched you struggle from a distance, waited to see you disappear, knowing you'd have no plans to rise on the Sabbath. Let us pray. We both believe we spoke the same tongue, but the nuance of dialect must have had the elementary words of our diaphragm sick with the aftertaste of new wine. Our foreign guests understood our language better than we did. You spun in circles, mimicked Sufism, tried to convince me it was fun, a merry-go-round. I guess my reaction to your politics was less than amusing. Forever and ever. You tepidly ran to corners, burdened with a fictitious, repulsive air, loathsome. There will be no psalms in your name. Barsabbas followed. You were replaced. Your teachings already banished scripture. Forgive the actions of the church. The congregation cowers in fear of your might. Let us pray. I should be whole, just be holy, fall into place, accept deception with the full screen of a shoe shine. Scream against your inevitable demise. Celebrate the repercussions of your holy sin. Tap dance my warriors away with a Felix smile. Let you illuminate in the spotlight. Watch the fallen apostles encircle your podium. They march counterclockwise, enraptured by the Holy Spirit. I should have cowered before your whims, bowed to her majesty's might, but I never wanted to passively follow. If that's my choice, let them talk. I no longer care. Heavenly love, who art in another's arms, forgive my relationship transgressions as I forgive those who transgress against me. Deliver our sexual organs from evil, for thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever and ever. Please rise for the liturgy found in today's program. The bold is to be read aloud by the congregation. I've failed you the way God has failed you. There is no perfection. Rear this symbol in my name. I forgive you. If God exists, I shall murder God. I forgive myself. There is no God. I will become God. There is no perfection. Forgive yourself. There is no perfection. Amen. I think I'm going to leave it there.
Okay, time for test. And Barrie's newest poet laureate.
hello everyone. So my name is Tanisha Turnant, and yes, I'm the new poet laureate for Barrie. So I'm going to be organizing my own poetic events that you guys are all invited to, and it will have rap and spoken word poetry. So we're really going to be highlighting the written word. In 2020, I published my first book that was titled Bearing Fruit. I actually wrote it when I was pregnant, and it's about that little one over there. So I actually described my whole pregnancy through poetry. So you get to really go on that emotional roller coaster with me and experience what it's like to be pregnant, or relive it if you've been through it. So my first piece that I was actually going to read is titled The Holy Ghost, and it does talk about God and church, but in a totally different way than you're talking about it. And I'd like to share it with you guys. So this one, I was actually going through things in college, and I'm like, you know what? I want to go to church. And I went by myself, and I went home and I wrote this piece. So here we go. No one knows the void of emptiness that had taken over my life, or the days I had a knife in hand, held tight, ready to strike and lash down, bringing death to my depression and strife. No one knows the true sorrows that were experienced by my heart, the sleepless fights, endless party whites, all trying to escape the emotions I long to depart. Yet I walk through these doors and I can hear his voice, making me feel weak yet strong, like I just completed a class in martial arts. When I walk inside this building, it feels as though the energy in my soul had bonded, and I'm experiencing a new element in my body, kind of like I'm high. An element I thought that couldn't be found in this cold, heartless world I swore overtaken by creatures of the night. When I feel his touch, all I can do is shake. His grace is so powerful, it's like I'm experiencing an internal earthquake, but in a good way. Like an earthquake of flowers, like roses and showers he proposes. Like a tsunami has came with rain that washes away the pain. Like a tornado is storming in my body, no warning, transforming my grief into something that's warming. Something that's telling me, it's not even yelling at me, informing that I will be okay. No longer must you face these hardships alone, he says. No longer must you seek attention from men that just want a bone, he says. No longer must you search for love, my child, because you have found it. And all I can do is smile. Like a little kid that got its first visit from the tooth fairy, all my teeth are showing. While tears of joy are covering my face. It's his grace. I can feel it running a race, a relay through my blood, and he's getting first place. Number one, he has me listed as on his priorities of life. No longer must I question myself. Is it okay to text him twice? Because now I know what it feels like to be put first. His merciful son has made it possible for my curse to be burst, and my thirst is now nursed and reimbursed with patience and love that can never be reversed. No longer must I feel alone. No longer will I walk with my head down, feeling as though my happiness has reached an indefinite postpone. No longer will I feel those types of ways, because I know that God loves me unconditionally. So totally. What you shared was amazing. So yeah, I have another piece. This one is titled Becoming. Look at your skin and notice your tone. Depending on the time of year, your tan may have grown. Or like mine, you may have a tan all the time. Just by sitting in the sun, we can change who we become. So why not go all the way and have some fun? It's important to fall in love with the process if you want to see results. Like, remember when you were a kid and always wanted to be an adult? Now an adult, I'm sure your mind has changed, and at times you wish you could be a kid again. But what we need to realize is that the ability to change, to grow, to become anything that we want to be lies with us. Our journeys are adjustable. They are variables that are convertible. We have the power to be anything we want to be and are only limited by our low vibrational thoughts. I hope you fall in love with the process of becoming who you want to be. And then never stop dreaming and continue to work on yourself. Because if someone who was once an addict never envisioned themselves clean, well then, life would be a hell of a lot more hopeless. But guess what? It's not. We become someone new after each book we've read, after each bite of a new dish, after traveling to a new place, after consciously experiencing new experiences. We become someone new with each child we bear. When we color our hair like an onion, we have so many layers. We become someone new in each relationship, and after each heartbreak, we are constantly becoming. Like caterpillars to butterflies, as we age, we become more fine and we lose track of time. Because the journey can always be filled with fun when we take advantage of our lives and who we become. We get to choose whether we focus on the dark or head towards the sun. The choice is ours, the choice is yours. So I ask, who do you want to become? Are you happy with who you are now, or do you see room for growth? Do you focus on the positives or the things that you loathe? Have you taught your child all the things you wish you were taught? Or do you focus on the things you give them, things that you've bought? Are you the same person you were 10 years ago with no signs of growth? Or are you completely different, living a new life, like you birthed yourself with the help of a midwife? I ask you this because I want you to change. Purpose cannot be found in just staying the same. As our age changes, so should our priorities in life. The man who was once a playboy now yearns for a wife. The one who was lost can be found, and the ones once high can stand firmly on the ground. So I ask, who do you want to become? The day is still young. Let yourself have some fun and enjoy yourself as you become you. Thank you. I think maybe I'll share it for our open mic section. If that's cool. Yeah, my little one's on the ground. Perfect. So, if you want to turn this to I'm on a Mac. So we want, we can't have 2 mics, this is too much feedback. So we want to have everything on and we can do that.
So I'm gonna mute myself and I'm gonna go sit with the panel.
Oh, here, I can spotlight you guys. We'll put it, okay, that's a good idea. I'll just the wires. So I'll put it on these guys and then they'll still be able to hear you, but
All right. How long the cord is not very long. There we go. I don't need this, right?
no.
I think we're okay. Right, we're okay, right? Okay. So we can just kind of move it around when you guys answer your questions and stuff. All right, and we're unmuted. Everyone can hear us online? Okay. So beginning with our panel, we have only 3 questions. The first one is that spoken word encompasses elements of rap, hip hop, storytelling, theater, jazz, rock, blues, and folk music. Did any of this draw you to spoken word? And were you inspired by any specific spoken word artists? Leanna, do you want to start us off?
Sure.
You have to unmute yourself.
I am unmuted. Can everybody hear me?
Should be able to hear it. And then you're gonna get feedback if you do that, so.
How about now?
Okay, now she can talk.
Can we hear you
Is
now?
that good? Can everyone hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, great. I started watching spoken word on YouTube online, and I only went to a slam many, many years after that. And the spoken word artists and poets that I watched online were Denise Frohman, who's active in the US, and Taylor Mali, who's also active in the US. And I sort of came to spoken word because it felt like the most entertaining and most interesting way to me at the time of telling a story. And it's only now at this point in my spoken word career that I'm starting to branch off into those other art forms that are all distinct from spoken word. But what's so fascinating is how they all sort of blend into one another. And I'm especially curious to hear about what Dane has to say coming from a dub or hip hop background, because that's not at all been my experience. So I'm very curious.
I guess it's my turn then. My influence, they were super wide. Like I said, even when I started performing poetry, I started looking at comics from a period of time and things were more monologues. My dad has a huge record collection in Bermuda, and has this one record. He only had one dub poetry record, and it was, I can't remember who the performer, but the record is a song about the Brixton riots in I believe that's in the 60s. And it's just this all-powerful dub poem. And I used to just listen to this all the time. But I didn't know what it was. I didn't know what dub poetry was. I knew my mom's from Jamaica, so I knew I knew it had something to do with that. And when I came up to Canada, I was heavily involved in the hip hop scene in Ottawa, had a radio show. I was doing a little bit of rap, but it was becoming more about materialism and stuff like that. The genre was starting to change. And so I needed somewhere to go, like as a performer and as a fan. And I met Anthony Bansfield and Eddie, the original one, and they were doing something that was a lot like what I remember hearing on this record. And they called themselves, one called himself a rap poet, the other one called himself a dub poet and beatboxer. And I was off to the races. I can't, like, I did watch people online, and I've had the chance to meet a lot of people. But honestly, as soon as I figured out, oh, this is what I want to do, it became more homework and less like fun. But like dub poetry, listening to like the music side of stuff like the New Yorkers and stuff like that, the Lost Poets and all that stuff. That's more exciting. That's stuff that you could just find on record or on the internet or whatever and just hit play or put down the needle and just vibe to it and get an energy from it. And that's, I've always had an enjoyment of it. And I think that's part of what I've tried to do as a performer, is sort of bring that with me, because the rest of the stuff is homework. But if I can bring the fun aspect of what I think is entertaining and fun whenever I read or perform or whatever, then I think I'm going in the right direction.
I grew up in Toronto. I've been in Barrie about 5 years now. So like Dwayne Morgan is huge. He's like the godfather of spoken word in Toronto. I'm actually going to be getting mentorship from him, which is awesome. I'm hoping to get him here to Barrie to perform. Do you know Dwayne?
Yeah, I know Dwayne. Dwayne's a cool guy.
Yeah, and like what they're doing Rise in Toronto. Rupi Kaur, she's huge right now. Milk and Honey, if you guys have heard of her. Sorry. Oh yeah.
Okay.
She's definitely a big inspiration for me. And I think she's from Mississauga or Brampton too. So these are local Canadian poets. But yeah, I think I started with songs, like song lyrics or poetry. So I kind of started writing R&B songs like Beyonce, Alicia Keys, I really liked. And then I gravitated to rap a bit as well, but rap is poetry. So yeah, I've kind of been writing ever since I was, I mean, not her age, a bit older, but poetry and song lyrics and rap, to me, they're all kind of connected. And that's what I'm hoping to bring with my show that I'm going to be doing here as well. Yeah.
You guys are making me miss Unity Market a little bit.
Oh, I'm actually really close with Lifted, and all of them, most of those artists will be in my show as well. I'm definitely trying to bring rap and poetry together in a different light here. So yeah, there'll be some Unity Market artists that if there was a rap segment one day, I could definitely invite out as well.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Shane used to always well, plus the atmosphere, right? But Shane always gave us a little bit of his magic, you know. So the next question. Spoken word poetry is a performance art that transcends the written form. Do you feel you are stronger at writing or performing? And are there parts of your process when creating that kind of work together or fight each other?
I feel like I feel like they're both equal. That makes sense. I feel like every time that I perform, I get better at reciting my poetry. And I feel like every time I write, I get more and more close to my heart and whatever message that I'm trying to relay. But everything is just, I find practice as well, and just finding your own style, your own delivery, like whatever works best for you, and just really becoming who you are and just showing that confidence when you perform or when you write. Mhm.
I think I'm a stronger writer than I am a performer. I think that performing has been something that I've had to learn, whereas writing is something that I could just observe, and I had ideas of what I wanted to do, and it was just about sort of just observing and reading, and that was all I had to do to write well. Whereas, I mean, for spoken word, when it started to be getting to published in a book, then like having guidance of an editor and stuff like that really helped as well. But as far as the performance side, it's something that like I've slowly and gradually gotten better and better at. Like I've always been comfortable on stage. Like I used to rap, I used to DJ, like comfortable on stage. But there's a difference between like, I don't know, rapping or doing a music thing and performing as a poet. And there's certain things you have to acknowledge and recognize. And I had to like a lot of like when you begin, a lot of spoken word artists, they just yell at everybody. And I can't say that I didn't do that. But very quickly I realized, you know what? I don't like when people yell at me anyway. So why would I want to yell at someone when I'm on the stage? You know, that's like me doing something that I wouldn't want back. And so it was more about figuring out, okay, but I do have to be loud at points. And I have to make sure I'm using the microphone well enough so that I don't have to yell. And I still have to emote. And I came to quickly came to realization that it is performance, it is, but it's closer to theater almost, because what I've realized is that when I'm reading my poetry, I'm not me. I'm the perfect version of me who's on that stage, who's expressing something. And that took it took a few years to realize. But once I did that, then I started realizing, oh, I could be really quiet at moments and then get really loud, and I can be slow or fast. And it's just, so I'm always learning how to.
That's good. And Leanna?
I think there's an element of play in spoken word that is really exciting and interesting for me as a spoken word artist. And I think that spoken word is, you know, like writing, directing, and acting in your own one-person show, which means that you can get up on stage and do almost just about whatever you want. There are very, very few limits. And I've been writing a lot longer than I've been performing. When I was 7 or 8, I would, like, on alternating days, play soccer with the boys, and then the next day I'd sit in my corner with a notebook and write stuff exclusively that rhymed, because at that age, like, it's not poetry unless it rhymes. And then I grew up and I started writing stuff in the margins of my notebook, you know, instead of paying attention in class, you know, things like that. You have all of these feelings and sometimes you don't know where to put them. So you put them down on paper and you don't share them with anybody until you find a community or an outlet, which is where the stage comes in. I think it's interesting to think about and talk about the concept of performance, because a performance means something different to everybody. And if you abstract it for a second, so many of us are performing in so many different ways every day in a lot of the spaces that we encounter. You know, you're performing a sense of respectability if you're in certain spaces, or you're performing according to somebody's expectations in the way that you talk about your job or about your relationships, and the information that you withhold, the information that you share. And that was something that was very interesting to me as a performer, because you can sort of draw on that. You can draw from real life in the way you write and in the way you perform. I totally agree. You know, I also would get up on stage and just yell at people, which is not fun. And it was an older poet in a workshop that I took who said that it's not considered best practice as a poet for you to get up on stage and to re-traumatize yourself on stage, for example, because so much of spoken word is so difficult and painful. And if you haven't processed that, if you get up on stage and read from your journal, you are doing yourself and your audience a disservice. And sometimes you don't know any better if you're a young poet. And there were times when I didn't know any better. But when you do, it becomes your responsibility to craft your poem and then to craft your performance based on what you know. There were some poets that I knew who couldn't even rehearse poems before going on stage because they had not processed the events that inspired the poem. And so to read or to perform the poem, especially in front of an audience, was a hugely painful experience that everybody could see. And so performance is something that you craft the same way that you craft a poem. And I don't always know when a poem is going to be for the page or when it's going to be spoken word. And if I read it out loud while I write it and it sounds good, it's a spoken word poem. But if it doesn't sound good, it's a page poem. And it's different every time.
Oh, that's actually really good advice. I think most of my poems shouldn't be read. And they're meant for the page for sure. So the third question is, can you share some tried and true techniques for writing or performing that can be applied to writers of any genre who perform their work? Who wants to go first?
I guess it's my turn. The first thing that comes to mind is there's a series of exercises that if you've ever freelanced for CBC, they make you do, which is like you stand up, you shake around, you stand up, you shake around, you take it. Oh, sorry, you didn't need to see that. You take a deep breath. You stand up, you shake around, you take a deep breath, you breathe in, you breathe out, you make a few funny noises, you relax your shoulders, you do all that stuff. And then this is like pre-performance. And this is something like I got a handbook from CBC when back in the day when I freelanced for them for CBC radio. And that's like something that I've taken to like workshops and just had everyone do, okay, stand up, everyone, okay, now move around, now make noises, now breathe and do this. And it's just like finding like, I think the crux of it is before you perform, you should probably have some sort of routine that makes you feel relaxed and prepares you so that you're not a complete wreck, which is something that I suffered through a lot. When I first started, not necessarily as a slam poet or a spoken word artist, but performing in other genres. As far as writing, it's tough because we all have different voices, we all have different inspirations, we all have different views, we all have different perspectives, etc., etc. I would just tell everyone, you do not have, if you sit down to write, you are not necessarily, unless you have a deadline and an editor and a publisher chasing after you, you are not committed to a deadline and you should see writing as such. You don't have to finish a poem just because you sit down to write a poem. If that time you're not ready to write a poem, write notes, write ideas, plan things out. If you know what mind mapping is, mind map. If you don't know what mind mapping is, just figure out what organization looks like for you. Maybe you want to write a poem about something and you can't write it. So the best thing to do is do some research. Go to the library, ask questions, ask an elder, ask a kid, ask an expert, ask someone who's completely not an expert, knows nothing about the subject, what they think it means when you say these particular words. Just like spread yourself out like that. And my friend, good friend, Dan Denorio, he writes under the name, well, he used to be a spoken word artist under the name Sophisticato. And he would say, you don't put pasta in the water until the water is boiling. And it's the same with writing poetry. You don't write until the environment is right to write. Unless, of course, you have a deadline, then you have no choice, but otherwise, that's my recommendation to everybody, is give yourself the space to write. Don't force yourself to write. Give yourself the space and the tools so that you can write what you dream of writing.
Mhm. So I'm just gonna add on to what you were saying too. I think just getting yourself out there, going to events, watching other poets, learning different styles, that's all ways that can help you grow and better be better at your craft. So just going out, meeting other poets as well, and just talking to people, networking with people, I think is a great way to learn. Reading obviously would always be a great way to learn more as well. And just as you're saying, just get out there and write. And nobody starts off perfect, right? Like when I wrote my first poem, I didn't know what it was going to be, but half the time I write now, I don't know what it's going to be about. I just pick up a pen and I just start, and I'm like, oh my God, after. So you sometimes you don't even have to really have any plan. Just if it's in your heart and it wants to be released, it'll find a way to get out there. And then you just look at it and you can work on it bit by bit and work on that delivery and how you want it to sound. At the end of the day, it's yours, it's art. It can be anything that you want it to be. So yeah.
Okay, Leanna.
I think sometimes one of the most challenging things, sort of to go back a little bit to what Tanisha was saying, is the hardest thing is to start. And you have to sort of get over the fear of, oh, well, this won't be good, or why am I doing this, or this isn't worth it, or what have you, any number of excuses. But if you can get over that, and just like, even if it's just to brain dump on a piece of paper, now all of a sudden you have something to actually work with, whereas before you didn't. And everything gets a lot easier, even if it's just a couple of words on the page. And even if you scrap them after and you never use them in the final piece, that still counts as work. That still counts as the effort that you've put in. I would say, don't be afraid to put a piece away for a few weeks or a few months or a few years. Sometimes, you'll write something and feel like there's something missing, but you don't know what it is. The thing that might be missing might be inspired by something that hasn't happened to you yet. And that's why it's not there. And so some pieces can be finished in, a few minutes or a couple days. You hear about poets or songwriters, they wrote the song in one day and it was a hit and all that. And sometimes that happens. But sometimes you put something in a drawer and you go back to it after a little while. The other thing I would say is to consume a lot of other forms of art, because they all inform one another and inspiration can come from all kinds of different places, especially something like spoken word and writing, where there's poetry, there's prose, there's spoken word, there's rap, there's so much out there. And it can be really helpful to go out and to explore it and to experience it. And one last thing, and this was something that I heard from another poet. So many of us write from personal experience and are inspired by things that have actually happened to us, and sometimes they're difficult things. You never ever have to prove that something happened to you or why you have feelings about it. You don't have to justify yourself in that way to anybody. If something happened, or you experience something as the unique individual that you are, and you've decided to write about it and share it, nobody has any right to come up to you and challenge you. I think that, if what you're writing about is offensive, or it is offensive to some person, then you have a responsibility to hear them out and, to have that dialogue. But especially if what you're writing from is a very deeply personal experience, you don't have to prove to anybody that it happened or why it's important to you. It's yours, it's unique. Nobody can ever take that away.
Yeah. Really good point.
This is true. Do you guys have anything else to add to that? Okay. All right. So that brings us to open mic. That was the whole panel. Is there anyone online who wants to do open mic? Has anything to read? Scott, okay, unmute yourself.
Can you hear me?
I can.
Excellent. Colleen, are you able to hear me?
Yes.
All right.
There it is.
Yay.
Go ahead.
This is from a larger piece. So this is just called, I'm calling it the prologue for now. The title of the larger piece is actually called Helen Smashes Her Ceramics. And it has to do with my mother's mental health during the years when I was a child that I now only understand 22 years after her death. So here's the prologue. Am I okay to go? Okay. The phone woke me out of a sound sleep, and I wasn't at my clearest when the voice at the other end of the line told me that my mother had had a fall. And although the voice went on to mention something about the caregivers making her comfortable, it totally escaped me that she was actually telling me that nothing more could be done. As I instinctively threaded together an assurance that I would come right over and asked her if I could bring her anything, the voice gently but firmly cut me off and reiterated, Scott, your mother is dead. Upon hearing those words, I achieved immediate clarity and a distinct but unexpected sense of relief. No, not a relief that comes when a long illness has mercifully drawn to a close, though there had been a gradual decline in recent years. No, the relief I felt was that I'd never again have to see or hear my mother sob as I left her second floor room at Simcoe Terrace. I was relieved that we had had our last Mother's Day, that we had celebrated her final birthday, and that there would never be another Easter or Thanksgiving together. And I was monumentally relieved that I would never again have to see that look on her face when my Christmas present failed to make her momentarily lose focus on all the disappointments in her life. I immediately missed my mother. I grieved my mother, but I selfishly knew I would never miss her sadness. She had died, but I had been released.
Very nice.
Thank
Um,
you.
Are we doing, is there any spotlight?
Is there anyone else online who wants to?
Is there anyone else online? I'm saying that as a no. Okay, so we're gonna work on the group here then, and I'm gonna mute this one.
Change the spotlight.
Okay. All right. Okay, does anybody here have anything they'd like to share? Okay. So as you come up, just introduce yourselves. You have about 5 minutes or so.
Okay, I'll do my best to get this. Hi, my name is Jack. I've been writing for about 9 years now. I started writing because the written word is extremely powerful. If it wasn't for the written word, I probably would have passed away after my wife passed away. It was how I got out of my grief and my deep sorrow. In those days, I just wrote. It didn't matter what I wrote or how I wrote. About 2 years later, I re-examined everything and I came up with my first, I call it poetry song. The right voice will make this a beautiful song, but I don't have Andrea Bocelli's voice. But I wrote the poem to my wife, for my wife, about the day we met. And I also ended up having this with me on the day that I met my now fiance, my beautiful fiance. So it's a poem about love at first sight. And it's called Under Your Spell. I knew right from the start, from the beating in my heart, that you and I should never be apart. I simply can't explain. It sounds just too insane that only I, but, okay, sorry. It sounds just too insane that I should feel this way, only hoping that it would stay. I don't know how I fell under your spell, but I knew it from the start with a beating in my heart that you would be the one that would let my feelings run, making all my dreams come true, should you have but just a clue. I don't know when I fell under your spell. If only you could see through my gazing eyes, a vision to behold, a romance to unfold, surrendering to the moment, arousing love when silent. I don't know where I fell under your spell. You are always on my mind, my passion refusing to unwind. You took my loneliness away and threw it in the fire. I don't know when or how, but it stirred up my desire. I don't know why I fell under your spell. And should we meet again, I would kiss you there and then, hold you tight and never let you go. If I could show you how I feel, you would know it's absolutely real. I'm forever grateful I fell under your spell, for I knew right from the start that you and I should never be apart, as I still my aching, pounding heart. Wrote a couple other pieces more recently. It was during the pandemic, very early in the pandemic, and I felt that the media was creating too much fear. And fear and anxiety reduces our immune system, making us more susceptible. So I wanted to inspire people not to be so fearful. But I didn't know how to get it out. But it's called COVID-19. Hey, COVID-19, who do you think you are? Taking us to the test, but then you go too far, putting some of us to rest. Hey, COVID-19, who do you think you are? Do you know who you're dealing with? We are the human race. We are the face of grace. We will self-isolate and distance our embrace, but we will stop your spread and not give in until you're dead. Hey, COVID-19, who do you think you are? You take our breath away, but we will soon prevail, and we will put an end to your infectious spread and never stop until you're good and dead, because we are the human race, and we will not fall from grace. We are the human race. This one I wrote early in my writing time. I was at the Italian bakery enjoying my espresso, and a news story caught my attention. It was a toddler that had escaped from the home, barefoot in winter, and was gone for some time before they discovered it. So I became angry. And I channeled this anger into this. I originally called it Plight of a Child, but with the recent news about the residential schools and this new awareness that every child matters, I called it Every Child Matters. Okay? A father's love, a mother's touch is what every child should ever know. Never pain, abandonment, abuse, or any other shame. It was decided before their time that they are to learn that life is love. A father's touch, a mother's love is what every child should ever know. A special gift for the world and you, a precious life for each to hold. Each gave their part to make the soul. A father's dream, a mother's hope, that they would show a love to cope and never fear or be in tear for their daily bread or what to wear. Flesh and blood of the love they shared. A father's love, a mother's love, is all a child would ever ask. Is that too much? I'm looking for it because I'm new with this. I'm looking for feedback. If anyone's willing to provide that, I'll be more than happy to listen. All right.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Have anyone else for open mic? You, is there anyone else? You want to go ahead? Only you. Make sure you introduce yourself, please.
My name is Paul Barrie. I'm ex-military Air Force. And I started writing because life forced me to. My father got sick when I was very young. And I imagined if he was going to die, what he would tell me. And that was my first poem, because I rewrote the words to Amazing Grace. I'm not going to do that. I used to be a singer, still am, but don't perform a whole lot these days. But recently,
Do you need the podium for that?
oh, that'd be great. Thank you.
They give you some room. They can still be on.
So in the last few years, I've found that I've not tried to write. I've just been driven to write. And because I've sung for so many years, I've been a very, very sensitive person to other people's plight, to other experiences in life and all that. And I find myself very affected by things that are reported in the news or other people, even a neighbor of mine, an older person who was considering assisted death. And so I'd like to read you a couple of them. And some of them are pretty odd, but I feel comfortable after hearing all of the very inspired, very inspirational things tonight. It's just amazing. So it gives me a new perspective. This is called As He Reminisces. Many have passed before me, and many have come and gone, but none so meek as the man whose weep echoes through the depths of Acheron. Many have stood before me, with their eyes so bright and pure, they sweep and they stare, and they bleed the air, for a reason, for a blessing, for a cure. Many have knelt before me, their hearts weighing heavy, it seems, for they carry the burden of lost fears turned to Merlin, and sad tears that would fill lonely seas. Many have lain before me, exposing their lives as they pray to be granted safe passage in a world thick of boskage. But too many have slept while they lay. And then a few have rested beside me and have placed their hands on my breast, for their faith and their soul have since honored the toll and have nurtured their young ones to rest. And then I watch the news a lot, and I'm affected by Ukraine, affected by COVID, affected by Truth and Reconciliation. This first one is about Ukraine. It's called Besieged but Not Broken. This scene is painted by heroes and mothers who absorb the grave vicissitude of human life in this place, wrought with remnants and passages. From one realm to another, at the mercy of the deadly sky overhead, and the diligent defending souls at the barricades in the distance. Pounding hearts distraught by this scene, when no task can ever suffice to scour the stench of humanity turned wretched. Mere survival has increased its cost without warning, benevolence, or accountability, and none can repay this embedded debt. This bridge to nowhere is no longer a link, but a symbol of that thin line in the sand, drawn by the courage and the will of the unyielding spirit, of those who reject the beliefs of the lone wolf and his actors, who have fallen into the void of false words and failed minds. And so there was this older lady as our neighbor, and she lived and lived, and she was sent to hospice and survived hospice. She was the only one to ever walk out of, what's the name of the house? Matthew's house in Alliston. Then she lived in the house in front of us for another year and a half and then passed away. But we found out that she was considering assisted dying. So I had written a poem that was called Soulful Memories. And I felt that it was a bit too long for her. And so I wrote another one for her, shortened version. But maybe I'll just read this one for you. I think you'll notice that I love to write in metaphor. I don't like to be literal because even when I reread my poems, I sometimes move myself because I remember what inspired the poem. So soulful memories justify my presence here. Remind me of my reason and refresh my depth. With the missing significance, dig my trench and render that safe place for my secret insecurity. You alone connect all my places. You alone know all my people. You alone understand my motives. Pierce the darkness of my loneliness with your whimpering light. The end of the path is not far from here, and I must make every step a safe one in the name of love, in the name of wholeness, in the name of serenity. Let me be your vessel to the next path. Let me know that you are mine and mine alone. Are you the new dawn or simply another dusk? You are glowing iridescently, but drowning in the haze of my conscience waning. The muddled voices linger from the past. They come to me in haunting choruses. Will there be new ones to come? Will they echo the dissonance that I hear in my mind? Or resonate the harmony that resides in my heart? Have I built a worthy bridge? Will it sustain the weight of my regrets and bring me into that safe shore? Or will it crumble, battered by the winds of my failed intentions? Benevolent grace, I pray. Mark me for this journey so that I can be known, so that I can be recognized, so that I can be welcomed. And I'll be short if you don't mind. I just want to share the one with about reconciliation. It's called Scattered Feathers. And obviously a lot of people were affected by hearing about the tragedy of the schools and the families that were torn apart. I felt that. It's called Scattered Feathers. A childhood lost, a life interrupted, shattered, crushed by the untouchables. School is out, but so many lessons to be learned. Soaked in the loving earth that nurtured them for their whole existence, their blood already saturating the ground into which their tiny bodies were buried unceremoniously. Their cries echoing endlessly in the hearts of their keepers. But the poisoned minds of the self-righteous, compounding the tragedy, drowned them out with falsehoods and deep rational indignation. Family hearths howled with the fuel of loneliness, sadness, and suffering. Flowing waters from their river, helpless to quench the scorching embers raging silently in their souls. Nature all around mourned the cruelty of the few towards the peaceful spirit of the many. Onto those who had honored the natural code of life, the unwritten law of living beings. Haunting memories have hung like dense fog over generations, relentlessly laying tranches of grief, one upon another, until the weight of two nations grew heavy, too heavy to bear, one broken and one guilty. Obscure genocidal wrath scarred upon the fabric of a hurtful, unconscious herd, inebriated by their own sense of righteousness and entitlement. The trauma forever embedded in the living tissue of the victims, of the silenced witnesses, of the hollowed out survivors. The mind closes the curtain from time to time, but the body and soul do not forget.
I'm Michael McNeil, and I'm a spoken word poet, and I have two poems. The first one is about a quiet fear of finding my voice and confidence. Push into the next stage before the momentum fades. You're not here to play it safe. It's time to erase the doubt. Shout, this change is coming out of my mouth. Only you know what it's all about, so don't set others' projective presets into your head. Leave the hate on red and embrace encouragement. Instead, starve out the fakeness and let genuine authenticity be fed. Let others dread when you rise above their head. Stand tall when others sit and wish for your fall. Those individuals have no gall, so why would you let their views stall your forward march? They would sooner watch you depart, but this is only the start. Invisible for now, but you got hearts. Always looking to the next card. Life is going to get hard before better. Rejection will be a common letter. Before you can enter the center, we'll try to box you out. Competition is friendly until they blindly knock you out. Doubt hits hard, makes you look at alternative routes, but you have to be a masochist and believe that your will is a powerhouse, fighting and overwhelming while others are scared and running, loving every moment, never second guessing, because while you're sitting and resting, others are confidently testing to be the best thing in their setting, letting countless attempts run wild while hesitation is beguiled. These words are my trial, and it took me a while to realize this is my style. Wordplay and rhymes I pile outside the spoken word rank and file. You can't silence my magnanimous roar. Never one to keep the score, but I will hoard one more until no sound erupts from my vocal cords. I'll keep writing until my arms hit the floor, until the day everyone gets bored and all I hear is snores. Even then, that will not shake my core. I refuse to retreat and shut the door into four walls in a room that suffocates my lore. I may not sparkle like a diamond, but I'm tougher than iron ore, for I will face the very thing that made me hide. As I find my voice, I make a choice to not be silent. Decades in self-isolation, there was too much inner violence. Every day shutting myself down, lost, never to be found. In fear, I drowned in hesitation. I was bound, I could feel the end surround. A flood-piercing sound, you're alone, nobody wants you around. Dig deeper into the ground until you hit 6 feet, remembering the feeling of utter defeat, convinced nobody needs to see the pain I suffer silently. But I'm not the only one that bleeds when they recede into agoraphobic misery, feeling lonely, wishing if only someone extended a hand, trapped, thinking no one understands, burying my head into the sand, wondering why I could only see darkness, pulling myself out. I had to harden to escape isolation and receive a pardon. Both prisoner and prison, I played a part in my incarceration, but today I'm breaking free of doubt, indoctrination of my self-worth. With every word, I'll put in the work until the day I observe obliteration or evolution. I won't stop until my life feels revolution. The second poem is about a moment in time where I just really couldn't see past the shoreline. No matter the skyscrapers of wealth we amass, the egos we build upon fragile glass, there is no task that can outlast a memory placed in the past. Age evolves too fast. Billions of years have passed, and yet we are smaller than an atom on the timeline. Microscopic, yet we advance until we collapse, only to start again from scratch. civilization building on the backs of those who came before, looking towards the horizon while others fixate on the shore, wondering, is there more to this life than constant strife? To look beyond a single life must be nice, because I'm fixated on the water meeting the sand as I run my hand through the universe's unstable land, fixating on the fact that one day I will return a single shallow strand within these grains of sand. Where's the plan? You can live small or grand. In the end, we are all just cosmic ants, tiny and insignificant to the order, likely to fall like the dinosaurs, only for our ashes to scour over the ocean floor. No matter the atmosphere we soar, our wings will one day be clipped. There is no way to outwit or equip ourselves for this aftermath as a one-way trip. So how does one not fall apart at this motion? How can some see an ocean of opportunity while others see another shipwreck graveyard, knowing no matter how hard we try, one day our lives will become part of that wreckage. One day someone will look out to the horizons, put hands full of shifting sand, and wonder the very same thought as they watch a ship slowly sink, capsize, and rot. Unaware, they stare at what was and is yet to become me. I wonder, will they find this bottle of poetry? Or will it too be dragged away by the violent currents, indistinguishable by the human eye, swallowed away by time, forgotten in a universal blink?
Oh, come on. Hi. And hi. Yeah, so my name's Andrina. I have 3 that I will read. I guess my first, I don't know what you call it, exposure to poetry was from Dr. Seuss, and it was Green Eggs and Ham. The reason being, he became one of my favorite poets because he was able to make something like completely epic and popular out of absolutely nothing. You know, like hundreds of his words in books aren't actual words no matter what. So I thought that was like extreme talent. Anyway, and then in high school, I had a drama teacher who was like downright my favorite person in the world. And he was the one who was like, oh, you should try. And then when COVID happened, I was like, maybe not. But I kept writing anyway. So I'm gonna just perform 3 different ones. I'm gonna do what was said by you, where I just, yeah, because sometimes it's needed. And we did it backstage, like in theater, we'd always do like a, because we had to go back on stage and the nerves are coming and we're like, yes, we're ready to perform. So anyway, I'll start with a very short one. And this one is the shortest poem I've ever written in my life. And thanks to my husband back there. This is the first, one of the first poems I wrote that was actually just about love. So forgive my shaking. Here we go. No, I'm sorry, my love. I cannot describe your beauty. There are no words so worthy. And I fear that the words I discover might not embrace you the way I need them to. So know, my love, you are not just beautiful, you are. That's the end of that one. Oh. He was also the first person in my life to tell me that it's okay to cry. I'm very, yeah, I'm very, I was like 2 years after my older brother, so I'm very like masculine. I'm told to be tough, you know, I played all the sports and stuff. So this is the first year I've cried so much in my life because of him. So in a good way, in a good way. So the other one I'm gonna read. It's not really about anybody's particularly. I actually wrote it because I wanted it to remind everybody about somebody. And I wrote it on International Women's Day, so that should give you a hint. I want to tell you about the most beautiful woman in the world. I saw her while scrolling through a feed, and her smile swallowed my every being. I was hugged by her warmth in the heartbeat. The sting of salted water streamed lines, soaking the cracks of my dead skin. The creaks in her cheeks made her grin lopsided, but damn, was she ever the most beautiful woman in the world. No one ever told me that I'd find someone that might exist, a glowing aura of gorgeousness. Someone, please tell me, you've seen this rare breed whose eyes did more than light up a room. They shone with courage. They were fierce and all-knowing. Without confidence, her knowledge sprouted thoughts of wisdom, so carefully created that every step, I too was with caution. My toes touched the ground one by one, and each footprint I left behind contained the grains of her skin, so that in every bit of me she was found. And though her eyes and smile were captivating, there was a chord that struck me by her vocals. I felt power. I became empowered, motivated, invincible. She kept me alive even when my world was rotting around me. She held onto my words that eviscerated my doubt, straight, stern, and to the point. I did not have time to question myself, doubt myself. Then there was a hiccup in her ongoing laughter, that kind that brought tears to our faces that hurt from smiling wildly she loved. She protected, and in her own times of pain, she projected. Her faith resurrected, her soul kept the glowing burning, the house of what was to be the most beautiful woman in the world. That's that one. The last one, I apologize, I wrote it today, so did not practice at all. There we go. There is no way that I could impress all the faces staring back at me. There's no light that I have within me that's bright enough. Light it up, match, met. If I just try harder to scratch the surface, the heat will become brighter and my success sight wider. I need to impress you. Lest I press you to believe in me with a massive desperation that seems to be rising up inside of me like the poison of a starving vine split 60 ways to engulf this mansion. I need to hold on to you all, connect to you. Otherwise, the passerbys pass by. My performance goes off to be just another one complaining on and on about my idea of society's time-obliterating mantra to succeed. I need to hold at least 3 rewards, 1 scholarship, a show prize, and maybe a master's degree. I need to live and breathe poetry to amount to anything as high as the greatest poet has. Grab onto these impressions, show proof of dedication, violate every bio with a description of the successes in me, so that you believe I've got what it takes. Otherwise, I'm left aside. I cannot see with my mind's eye whether the hardness of my try was good enough. See, I've got what it takes. More than papers, paying papers to stay alive, a pain so vile, while I graze the emergency dial to get every bit of me on this petite screen so that I can feel I can feel free from a grip that encloses around my being, so tight that I type faster than I've ever known. I can't let go of this moment until I've owned it. Disown every word that's wrapped around their little finger. I'm here to impress your mind's eye. To insert a kaleidoscope that brings your viewpoint to an altar, turning 180 different ways, which, by the way, is 3 times the amount it takes to impress you. I want to leave you with a thought so long ago abandoned by human nature to adult up, grow out of the poison, dim the light, and in the midst of the darkness, write and create, put out indifference, pour out the difference, because by my success, I've learned to alter ideas without a single award, with the written word. I've engaged you in a lesson in psychology, communicated my evidence of dedication. So I stand here almost broken and shaky, not as strong or high or mighty, because every time I try hard, I feel the need to become more than I am, as I'd want to be rewarded when the match is lit. That's my
You're definitely good enough. Do you have one more for us? Do you want to do another?
I can, sure. If anybody was at the Barrie Arts Awards, you probably heard this one. It's short and sweet, but I'm gonna need some help. So when I say oh, I'm gonna need you guys to say love. Okay, you can say it however you feel, like love or love, like whatever you're feeling about it. Okay, so here we go. Oh, love. You've given me butterflies, yet broken my heart. Tore it apart, yet put it back together like a piece of art. Taught me that some friendships are best with space apart, and space apart isn't always so dark. You've taught me that love isn't always found in family. You've shown me that not everybody that I loved me. Oh, love. You made me feel whole at times I thought I was empty. Lost every ounce that used to be me, so I chase you each day, searching for Cupid's wings. We all search for love, but are told to find it within, like we know what we're looking for or where it's been. But when I stopped searching, finally stopped looking, love started emerging when I began soul searching. See, what they say is true. Real love begins with you. Real love will change your outlook and views. Real love will have you feeling brand new, feeling like designer shoes, feeling like Taylor Swift, 22. Living life from a whole different point of view. Real love is the beauty of a thing, and it can be found in everything, not just monetary things. They say what you seek, you shall find. So imagine what would happen if you put love on your mind. It might make you blind, might help your grind, might redefine your life, get it aligned. Love makes you free, helps you unwind. It can be like a drug and give you a hell of a time. If no one told you, I'm telling you today that you deserve love in your life in every way. You deserve a love that would never stray. Hey, you deserve to be happy, not only on your birthday. You deserve love with your morning coffee, a love that makes you feel fabulous and saucy. You deserve whatever your heart desires. Don't let the lies people tell in this world put out your fire. Listen to your heart. Let it take you higher. Listen to your heart. Let it take you higher. Oh! Love.
I'm back. So I have probably the shortest short story in this book here, which Dane is also in. So it's very cool to be able to be under the same cover, under the same roof as some real talent. It's a real positive ending to this movie. I don't know. So how does a garden come to die? Excuse the sarcasm. Butterflies stopped fluttering into her flower garden. Her heart sank at their memory, brushing her shoulder, landing on her nose. She stopped using chemicals long ago. She signed petitions and voted green. Her voice was ignored, so they will never be seen. Good reading. So we're about to close off and get kicked out of here right at 9 o'clock. So these guys may have some books to sell you guys. So you're welcome to do that. Just a little note about next Word Up is January 12th. I think we're probably going to go online just to avoid weather because we have a publishers panel. So any of you guys who've ever wanted to be publishers or be published, I mean, we have Michael Marola of Guernica Editions and Michael Callahan of Exile Editions. They have published actually a lot of the books, the authors we've had at Word Up. They're some really funky, really interesting work. So I'm sure they'll come with some great advice on query letters and all the wonderful process that you have to go through to try and get published. Please sign up for our newsletter at wordupbarrie.com. We thank Rhubarb Media for hosting us, and checkenergy.ca for Zoom hosting, and the City of Barrie for their support. And thank all of you guys. You're word uppers now.